Is using marijuana a sin? So a few years back, I remember preaching at another church's youth retreat, and after one of those evenings, a young guy sat down with me and just very candidly confessed that, man, I think I believe I'm a Christian and I love Jesus, but man, I love getting high. I love smoking pot, and I don't know how to balance those two things. And so we had to talk through that, what is okay and what's not okay. Why is that sinful? Now, I'm not so concerned about the CBD oil that you can go buy at the local grocery store. And I'm not talking specifically today about what a doctor may prescribe you for one reason or another. If you got medication to take, you should wisely take that medicine. This specifically today, I want to address the issue of getting high. Is it okay to smoke weed and get high? All right. Now, the Bible obviously does not address any specific drugs by name, but I would turn you to Galatians chapter 5, verses 16 through 24. This is a very famous passage known as the works of the flesh versus the fruit of the Spirit, okay? As Christians, we are to be walking in the Spirit, be led by the Spirit, but we have a struggle with the flesh and a temptation to sin, right? And so Paul gives a huge list of things that are the works of the flesh and a huge list of things that are the fruit of the Spirit. And I think it would be really beneficial to study those verses. And I want to point out two words in particular for you found in this passage. The first one is found in verse 20. You see the word in our English translation, sorcery. Now, guys, that can be pretty tricky. I'll be real. I don't think that's a great English translation right there, because there's a layer you got to peel back to that word there. Because when I read that word sorcery, I think about so many things I've seen in Disney movies with crystal balls and Harry Potter stuff and casting spells, and I'm like, well, man, I don't do any magic, I don't practice witchcraft. Okay, check mark. I'm good with not practicing sorcery. But you got to look at the original language here. What did the Apostle Paul originally write 2,000 years ago in the ancient Greek? He said the word pharmakeia. Now, I think you'll see a connection there with a word that we use often in English. Now, pharmakeia is specifically drug use. Now, that does relate to pagan worship because drugs have been around for all of time in different forms and methods. And oftentimes back then, people would use drugs to enhance their pagan worship rituals. And so Paul is condemning that as a work of the flesh. Next, I would point you to what he says is the last part of the fruit of the Spirit found in verse 23. He says the word self-control. Self-control is such an important part of walking in the Spirit and being led by the Spirit. Paul says again in 2 Timothy 1:7, for God did not give us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and of love and of self-control. This is why lust is such a huge sin problem, why drunkenness is so often condemned in the Bible, why anger often for us is a sin issue. Why? Because in those moments we're giving up our self-control, giving it over to something else. And I believe when you are getting high, even on something like marijuana, you are purposely, intentionally giving over your self-control so that you can be led by, controlled by, taken away by something other than the Holy Spirit. And that's where it's a sin issue right there. Hey, thanks again for joining us for Q&A. Remember, you can submit your own question anonymously by texting that number on your screen.